Hi everyone, this is Final Voice TV, your favorite television on the YouTube channel. So today we look at Africa, housing problems or housing deficits in countries within Africa. It appears there is a severe backlog of housing within countries in Africa. What is causing this? You know, cities in Africa are fast expanding. You go to Harare, you go to Accra, Lagos, Abuja, Nairobi, Monrovia. I mean, everywhere in Africa, cities are now expanding. They're becoming so nice, but they have issues with land grabbing or where to get land. So how do we provide accommodation for the youth or for the people in these fast expanding cities? There is someone with me here who has explored these challenges and has written a book about that kind of Africa we want or what we need in our countries with regard to accommodation or housing. I'm going for a break. When I return, he tells us about himself and the book he's written so far about housing in Africa, how countries can provide housing for their people or how people get lands. Is it by the formal means or by the informal means? You can join this discussion today by leaving your comment in the comment section. Hit the like button and kindly subscribe. Let's have that audience we're looking for to discuss issues like this. It's about his book. It's about how we solve the backlog of housing in Africa. I'll be right back.
Dear viewer, kindly like this video, subscribe, hit the notification bell to receive more videos.
So, viewers would like to know you and also would like to hear from you about your book. What is in that book that will help countries within Africa explore this challenge and how do you even solve housing problems within their countries?
Okay, thanks, Mr. Charles. My name is Michel Mahachi, and I am from Zimbabwe. And I've just been studying in Germany, but this story that we are actually talking about has a setting in Zimbabwe. And I regard myself as a social scientist, sometimes a philosopher. And I am just generally observing things that are unfolding around me, very curious. And this is kind of how I then came up with the story that I put in this book. It's a novel entitled All We Ever Wanted.
All We Ever Wanted?
Yes.
Oh, so great, so great. So tell us more.
Right, so if you want to learn more about the story, you should buy the book.
So first of all, the books are in the shops, they are ready. You can get your copies of this book, All We Ever Wanted.
Yes.
It talks about how people can acquire lands, how countries within Africa can even deal with the backlog of housing in their countries.
Right, so this story, All We Ever Wanted, actually, as I pointed out, has its setting in Zimbabwe. So the central character to the story is actually called Ngoni. So in my language, Ngoni means mercy. And so this is a young man that is actually growing in a small village that is just outside a city where there is a growing influx of people who are looking for accommodation in this particular village. So this story is what he observes from what is happening around him. And then we also have another central figure to the story, and the name is Thomas. So Thomas is a newspaper vendor, and he just sells newspapers by the corner of a street in a small town that is just close to where Ngoni stays. And so the reason why I chose a newspaper vendor is many people look down upon newspaper vendors, but they are the source of information. So they read the newspaper for free. They actually get the news before everyone else, because when you are asleep, they are already reading the newspaper. And those people who can't afford to buy newspapers, they come and also read for free if they are friendly with the newspaper vendor. And so for me, the newspaper vendor then becomes a person where news and information is purveyed from. So people come to get news, and he also has news probably that is sharing. And he then happens to be a person then who is also involved in the sale of land because of his access to a variety of people. And then we also have another key figure to the story, and the name of this guy is Mahachi. So Mahachi is the architect of selling land that is outside the small town. And so Mahachi's job is to look for as many people who are looking for accommodation. And his job is not very difficult, because the moment he just advertises that he's selling land, his job is cut for him. So his phone, actually, the battery runs out, answering calls, people looking for accommodation every minute.
Yeah.
And so the story just hovers around these three. And so basically that is the storyline.
So Ngoni, Mahachi, and Thomas. We would like to know more about the book, but it's about Africa. It's about how people can even acquire lands in Africa to build their own homes. It's about how countries provide accommodation in their fast expanding cities. Final Voice TV. I'll be right back after this break. So Thomas, Ngoni, and the other character. What do we? Yeah. What is in the book? Tell us what is to be learned in the book.
Right. So, like I mentioned, we have these central figures to the story, and so what happens is we then have now people who then come into contact with these people at various from various angles. So we have people who are buying, and the relationship with those that are selling. And we have the relationship with the people that are actually in the village. So this story is revolving around this kind of relationship between these various parties. So how do the people who are in the village feel about people coming into their village? And how do the people who are getting money, interact with those people that are giving them money? And what is the interaction with the government as it sees something that is illegal taking place? And this young boy Ngoni also seeing this thing happening in his village. So we are exploring all these things in this story. So basically, this is the, I would say in a nutshell, this is the plot of the story. The relationship that and the dynamics that are around acquiring land in an area that is just outside the city. And also the reaction from the government as it sees, a potential disaster actually looming. So basically, that is the nutshell of the story.
Yeah. So tell us more about these ways of acquiring land in a formal way or informal way, as you have.
Right. So, like I mentioned, the title is All We Ever Wanted. So, the first thing we are saying is, what does the government want? So the government is saying all we ever wanted was to give people a decent place of accommodation. Then we have those in the village are saying all we ever wanted was a rural type of life, which is not expensive, not this city life that you are bringing to us. And then we have those people who are buying land so that they can build houses, are all saying all we ever wanted was just a place that we can stay, a place where we can stay and go to work from. And we also have the people who provide the service of looking for people looking for land, are saying all we ever wanted was to give people places of land. We see them, they are homeless, so we want to give them land. So basically, this is the title, All We Ever Wanted. Now, coming back to this issue of the acquiring of land. So what we have is, like you mentioned, that our cities are growing very fast, and ideally the situation should be that the government should actually have a plan to really take care of all the settlement needs that people have, because this is actually a basic need for people, right to shelter. It's even enshrined in our constitutions. But however, the situation as it unfolds is that our cities really are growing faster than the planning authorities can actually handle. So what is now happening is a situation where there is actually a big backlog. So you are put on a waiting list, and you are told you are number 1,000, whatever number you are given, and you are waiting patiently that something might happen. And you see yourself growing older and older and realizing I actually am still on the waiting list. So you come back to the authorities. Well, what number am I? And you see that your number has not really changed. So there's a growing impatience among people. So this now brings about this reaction, where now people start to say, I think we need to take control of the situation, and they start to plan. And some people have actually come in this space, and they are planning on behalf of the government.
Yeah.
And they are planning now. The problem with their planning is that they do not follow the standards that the government would require. That when you give a certain settlement, there should be provision for churches, provision for school children to have a school, even just an open area where you can just recreate. So all these things are actually not provided for by our so-called planners. They are just after settling more and more people and also getting money. Well, but that is them. And so then the government starts to react to the situation when it realizes we suddenly have a settlement that actually has maybe 5,000 households without roads, without water, without basic sanitation. And this now creates the perfect conditions for outbreak of major diseases, cholera, dysentery, many other diseases like this. So then the government tries to react at a much later stage. But, it's like now trying to fit in things in a small container, yet they actually, so you are like behind the schedule. And this now creates another problem where you are now trying to correct a problem and causing more problems in the final long run, because then you probably have to destroy people's houses, and these people don't have the resources to then probably build alternative structures. So these are the kind of things that we are exploring in this novel. So on one hand, the government reaction. On the other hand, the people looking for accommodation.
Yeah, so you mentioned the backlog of housing in Africa, and I put it on record that there is a severe housing deficit in countries within Africa. In Ghana alone, there is a housing deficit of about 1.2 million. That is just Ghana. In Zimbabwe, it's 1.5 million housing units. So the government of Zimbabwe needs almost 1.5 million housing units. In Ghana, they need 1.2 million housing units. In Nigeria, they need 28 million housing units. That is the backlog of housing issues in South Africa. 28 million housing units. In Nigeria, in South Africa, they need 2 million housing units. Just 2 million housing units to make sure that people do not sleep on the street. Nobody is homeless, and people have where to put their heads. Some kind of a shelter. So yes, it is true that there is a backlog of housing, or there is a severe housing deficit within countries in Africa. Yeah, so I do agree with you, and I know this is the kind of book that we need to read to know which role can the government play, or is the government, this central government in Africa supposed to play and what is our role as civilians or as individuals, or what we can do to acquire land formally to also help offset that problem of housing deficits in Africa. Going for a break, you can join this discussion of housing deficits in Africa, how we solve housing deficits in Africa. He has explored this issue in some kind of, he's using a story to tell the housing challenges or the housing deficit issues we have in Africa. What do you have to say? It's a nice book, and I recommend this book for you watching us now. Just grab a copy of the book and you will love the book. I'm going for a break. I'll be right back. Yeah, so it seems to be an interesting book that book lovers should watch out. When are we going to have this book? You said, I mean, in the next month or two, right?
Right. Thank you, Mr. Charles. The book is going to be hot off the shelves, yes, in the next month or two. Right now, we are just doing the final touches on the book, but everything else is there, and I promise you, it is a book that if once you touch it, you are not going to put it down, because you really are engrossed in the subject matter. Yeah. And then, so the basic or the important thing that we are actually doing in this book is we are not actually coming up with a solution, but we are exploring the problems. And then people have to realize how complicated this whole issue of accommodation is from the various angles that we look at it. Because we present to you the reaction that is done by government and the consequence that it has on the people. We also look at the impact of this settlement or the informal settlements that are just mushrooming up. It's not just Zimbabwe, it's not just South Africa. All the cities that are in Africa actually face this problem of informal settlements. And this is an area that actually really needs urgent attention. So we are just exposing it to the public domain, that people be aware of this. And they sort of critically look at their own contribution to the housing issue, and how they could also probably bring it to a more tamer situation. This
is all we ever wanted. That is the title of the book, even,
yes,
right?
Yes, all we ever wanted.
It's an interesting book with a nice content, and viewers can do yourselves good if you can grab copies of this book. So thank you for coming, and viewers really appreciate your touch on the book, and they'll surely grab copies as soon as they come on the market.
Maybe what I could do is just give you a snippet of the first chapter. So in the first chapter, we have the young boy Ngoni, and he actually has a vision of what actually transpired during. He actually has a dream where he sees the coming in of white settlers and how Africans are actually pushed from the land that they were settling, and then the cities actually start. So when the cities start, this is now the first thing that we see in the growth of a city is people being pushed out. And now in the small village that where they have now settled, the town has followed them again, and probably they are going to be pushed out again. So this is how the story starts. And it also has some people being arrested. It also has some people being evicted. So there's quite a lot of things that are going on in this story, and it's only if you read that you can experience it.
Yeah, it's very catching and it's quite captivating. It's a gripping one. So go grab your copies. It's a nice book. I can attest to this fact. It's a nice book, nice content. It is worth reading this book, especially if you're coming from South Africa. It's a nice book for those in South Africa when it comes to land grabbing issues in this region. But hey, it's for everyone too. In Africa or Southern America or Asia, in Europe, in America, wherever you are, you can read this book and learn something about land issues or accommodation issues in Africa. Thank you for watching.